Okay, Dr. Lancer, let's give Michael an on-air evaluation.
I'm not looking very good right now. Listen, I got a first baby on the way. I'm a little bit stressed, so sleep's been interesting.
Yeah.
Dr.
Well-
Lancer, be gentle with me.
Well, as long as you're the father, you're okay.
Listen, I'm gonna
We
look
think.
worse if I'm not.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, let me see. I actually think you look pretty rested.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have good facial shape. The bone structure's good. The expression lines haven't been altered. You look pretty authentic.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll take it. I got one of the best in the biz telling me that listen, I'm feeling good now. Let's call it a day. Let's wrap the show.
If he was going to use one of your products, what should he use?
Well, guys are not usually the best patients, so you have to start them slowly. And I think the sensitive, polish, cleanse, nourish. 3 steps: polish, cleanse, nourish, sensitive, is probably the easiest way to start.
Okay, you'd be surprised that he is very, very good with his skincare. He does it morning and night.
You know why? Look who I'm living with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right.
if I'm
Yeah.
not,
Miss Perfect.
I look like a dusty old leather saddle before I was with her. And then I get to speak to people like you. And so now it's just been drilled into the old noggin and say, okay, I better take care of myself here.
Well, young guys are taking care of themselves now, so it's part of the trend.
It is.
It's not like the old days. In
It
the
is.
old days, in a given day, if I see 50 patients a day, probably at least 5 of them are men. And they're not there for anything other than beauty issues. And then there are a few other guys that straggle in with skin cancers and a variety of other things. But guys are taking care of themselves, and it's not just young, studly guys like your hubby. It's sometimes guys who are coming back to life for a second time.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So across the board, right now in your office, what is the main skin concern? Is it fine lines? Is it hyperpigmentation? Is it dryness? What are you seeing?
I think that in a given day, the most common concern, whether it's male or female patients, whether it's 18-year-olds or 80-year-olds for the first time, or whether it's people of black, brown, yellow, red, white ancestry, across the board, the number one concern is uniformity of color. People don't really care so much what the genetic color is. They want it to be one color. So blotchiness is a bad thing.
And so what can you do for blotchiness?
What causes blotchiness?
Well, blotchiness is a complicated story. So color unification correction is a tough job. And those patients, you need a really good history in terms of the ancestry, number one. Number two, you need some sort of information in terms of what do they do all day, work-wise, leisure-wise. You need to know whether the environment is contributing to part of it, which it usually is. So part of it is genetics, family trait, part of it is lifestyle, and then part of it is just lifestyle in terms of how you lead your life.
And how can someone combat the blotchiness and the different kinds of skin colors? If they want an even skin tone, what are some tips?
Well, I can tell you the biggest mistake most people make is that they try to get a procedure done first thing to fix a color mismatch. They always come in with some sort of problem that came from a procedure. So they were trying to fix something and they get some sort of bizarre med spa IPL treatment, or they get some sort of chemical peel and the problem is compounded. So I think when you're trying to repair something, you first want to evaluate what caused it. And then number two, you always want to treat it topically first, medically first. And that's why the Lancer skincare part of it is usually the first treatment before we even think about procedures. Before you get to the lasers and the radio frequency and the chemical peels, it's always a medical rehab first.
What are some preventative beauty tips? So, for instance, like, what are you seeing that's big? I know Botox is huge. What else is happening?
Well, I think in beauty tips, I think the number one tip is cutting back in terms of the amount of stuff you do. I think that if you're doing neuromodulator, whether it's Botox or Dysport or Xeomin or Jeuveau, whatever brand it is, it's less of it. So that's one trend. If you're doing volume correction, known as fillers, it's less volume correction. So I think the more subtle, under the radar maintenance correction is a current beauty tip.
Let me ask you this. What happens over time? Because this is all, we live in a world now where everything's on social media. Everything's out there. It's on the internet. And so people are seeing themselves a lot more frequently, in my opinion. They're analyzing their faces. They're analyzing their friends' faces, their peers, this. And so, in my opinion, what happens is people are business is probably booming. It's probably good. People are coming in doing a lot more procedures. But what are the long-term effects of doing too much? Because I see people doing this younger and younger, and I have a mixed camp where some people say it's preventative, start younger, and some people say don't do so much when you're young. Like, where do you kind of stand in that debate?
Well, I think the best thing is to have an educational part to it. So when I see a patient for the first time, let's say they're a skin virgin, which there aren't a lot of those left, people who come in having had nothing done. So those are the rare birds, but the majority of people are people who've had something done, regretted it, and want to start a new course. So I think education is first in terms of finding out what is the problem you're trying to fix. Once you know what it is you're trying to fix, you need a menu, you need a program, you need an approach, because just haphazard use of products or procedures will guaranteed lead to a problem. So I think that's the big trend now in terms of cutting back on the amount of stuff being done and doing it more gradually. It's not like a one procedure and done. It's a composite of repetitive treatments, so you get a bigger cumulative end result.
I read your book, which I loved. Talk to us about your method that you have and why you created this method, because I know there was a lot of strategy behind it.
You have to understand that I'm a physician and surgeon and trained in dermatology. So I look at beauty in terms of part of an organ system. And everything I do, I sort of evaluate in terms of what's the problem, what caused it, how do you repair it, and how do you stop it from coming back. And so in the method development, I was always taught as a medical student and as a resident and as a fellow, I was always taught you want to know what does that patient use to take care of their complexion. And complexions from head to toe. So whether they were coming in for skin cancers or psoriasis or eczema or acne, whatever the problem was, we would always ask the patient, bring in whatever product you're using. And I quickly realized that the majority of people have stuff. And they either use it or they don't use it, or they use it improperly, or they can't even remember how they got it. So people would bring in bags of products, and I'd say, how do you use this and what's it for? And I'd say, God, I don't know. And so I really quickly realized that people needed education, and the easiest way to educate was to make them understand that simplicity was the most important thing, and that was the method of polish, cleanse, nourish.
And can you explain and walk us through that?
The original 1985 version was 3 products, 3 simple steps, and it was a uniform polish, rinse, cleanse, rinse, and then a nourish. And that was for whether you had blemishes or whether you had anti-aging issues or sensitive skin. It was pretty much a one-size-fit-all. And it worked like a charm. In fact, it was the reason that my practice exploded and was just a giant success, because you couldn't find the products that were developed either online, you couldn't find them in retail, and people would come to the office purely for the polish, cleanse, nourish.
I am obsessed with your polish, cleanse, nourish. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I also am a big fan of your oil.
Right.
Can you talk about the importance of oil?
Well, I'll tell you. So the polish, cleanse, nourish, and people would say, by the way, they'd say, well, what does that have to do with the cleanser and the toner and the moisturizer that I use? And I'd say, well, the polish, cleanse, nourish is a step program to be used in that order. And it has to do with the way the biology of the skin, the function of the skin is. You need to exfoliate it properly first, rinse, then do the cleansing, rinse, and then do the hydration. And then that was the base grouping. And there was a group for now the anti-aging group, the blemish group, and the sensitive group. And then advanced products were developed, whether it was a vitamin C or a glycolic polymer or a retinoid. And then the oils came in. And oils are important because they help seal various layers in the sort of complexion perfection formulation.
When you first got into medicine, did you want to study skin? Is that what you originally went into, or are you just going back?
Well, it's very interesting. I had an interest in skin as a child, so I was sort of born in 1953, and pretty much the brand started in 1953. I had an interest in skin from the beginning.
What piqued that interest?
And when I had, as a child, I accidentally was burned, and I had a very severe burn, and it took months, years to completely clear it. And I was fascinated how the skin can repair itself, and that's what led to it.
Wow. So that's what got you into dermatology, is having the burn.
Yeah, I was. One day I was in the basement of our farmhouse, and I accidentally fell into a basin of boiling water. I was sort of the lobster for the day. And it took months, a long time.
How much of your body was this?
I think it was about 10-15%.
Wow.
And for a young kid, this was a big traumatic event. I was under 10.
Well, burns are painful.
It was painful, and it was just a nightmare. And we were, poor farmers. And my mother used to take me to the General Marcus Welby in Dinglesville, Connecticut. And slowly, I was watching how this fellow was cleaning the wounds and watching my own skin heal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So when you came to Beverly Hills and you started to develop your practice, how did it take off? I'm sure it's been a long road.
Yeah, it's been a long road. So all the way from a burn in childhood. And then during my years in school, I think my real interest started in about 1971.
What school was this?
Well, I did my undergraduate at Brandeis University in Boston. And then I went on to medical school at UC San Diego, Salk Scripps. And then I went on to internship in San Francisco, and then my dermatology at the Harvard combined program. And when I came out in 83, I was really primed to go.
So celebrities, you do a lot of celebrities, you do a lot of influencers. What are the trends you're seeing with them?
Well, it's interesting. When I came to Los Angeles, 1983, 84, I had a very big interest because of my training days in Boston with lasers. And I started treating just about everything, benign, malignant, cosmetic, non-cosmetic, with lasers. And I sort of developed a reputation for repairing scars, and I became known as the repairman. And I think W Magazine did an article having to do with me as the repairman. I made a ton of enemies with that article, I can tell you.
Why?
What? I think I was repairing not just traumatic injuries, but some of the less than optimal surgical scars.
Okay.
So whether it was a breast procedure or a facelift or a tummy tuck, I was sort of repairing with lasers the scars, and that's sort of my claim to fame back in the 80s. And even to this day, most people see me for laser work. And slowly, the entertainment world, the people in the visible eye, didn't want their scars visible. And that's how the clientele of the clinic changed tremendously.
How have you seen this space shift? Because I for a long time, it was very hush-hush people getting procedures. And I feel like people are, look, we're doing this podcast all about it now. People are openly talking about a lot of this stuff a little bit more. Do you find that, or no? Is that just
in my office, and I mean this with all modesty, I think it's almost a status symbol to be a Lancer patient. That's the way people look at it. And when a variety of people are interviewed, they say, "Oh, Dr. Lancer's my dermatologist. Dr. Lancer this, that, and the other thing." So it's in a sense a status symbol that it's not a surgical procedure, that it's a dermatologic procedure. And I think that's what's important. The public now is looking to dermatology for the guidance in terms of repairing and enhancing their appearance.
So if I have to get a C-section and I come into your office, what will you do to the scar?
Zap you with a couple lasers?
Yeah, I want to know. How do you get rid of it?
Well, that's an important question.
Okay.
Because that scar, no matter how well the gynecologist does the procedure, scars have a genetics to them. No matter how well it's done, no matter how good the practitioner is, the end result is sort of a crapshoot. It could turn out almost invisible, or it could be really gnarly.
Okay.
And so what happens is usually within the first month post-delivery, we begin treatment. So on facelifts, it might be within the first 2 weeks we'll do work, or other elective surgical procedures will start the laser work earlier. And in C-sections, it's the same thing, because the sooner you start repairing the scar, the more you influence its course.
And what does that look like? Does it hurt? Is it a long process? Is it heat? What is it like? If I'm going to come in and get my C-section scar fixed,
Yeah.
let's say I have one, I don't know yet. What is walk me through the process?
It's impossible to think you could scar.
I
She's so
can-
perfect, you know.
I can't imagine it.
I can't imagine.
Why
But-
don't you tell me I'm perfect every day?
Dr. Lancer, you're making me look bad here.
so I'm just telling you, I'm giving you a tip here on this. So let's say there's a little bit of a visibility, whether it's raised or red or discolored. The process involves the following. And number one, even postpartum, while you're breastfeeding or not, whatever is going on, the scar is treated topically first. And it's usually treated with like the advanced retinol. We'll use that from the skincare line. We'll use it with some topical cooling agents, maybe a little bit of the vitamin C and maybe some of the boosting hyaluronic acid. And after a week or two of calming the incision line, we'll start like multiple different types of lasers. And for the most part, it's almost totally pain-free.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's almost totally pain-free, and the results are pretty predictably good, whether you're white, black, brown, yellow, red ancestry. The hook to the story is it's a slow process. It's not a one-time treatment. Usually a scar may need to be treated a half a dozen times, and maybe 4 to 6 to 8 week intervals. And so for people who from other parts of the planet, they will fly here every 2 months to have staged repair of a scar.
Wow.
Yeah.
You spoke on retinol.
Right.
Explain retinol in layman's terms. Like, just give it to us, like, very basic.
Okay, the very basics are that there are certain must-haves in the world of dermatology. One of them is vitamin A, and retinol is a derivative of vitamin A. And retinol comes in various chemical forms, and everybody knows the word Retin-A. That's a brand. And there are generic versions of it, but nonetheless, Retin-A is a brand of vitamin A. There's retinol, retinaldehyde, etc. But the point is, it's topical application of a product that, as a vitamin, in its purified form, helps improve skin cell repair and turnover or replenishment. So if you have a scar, there are dysfunctional cells. What you're trying to do is latch on to the normal healing process and redirect the way the body repairs itself. So think about it. You have an injury. Even a surgical incision is an injury, but it's a controlled injury. And what we want to do is influence the controlled repair. And retinol is one of the agents we use. We'll use vitamin C, vitamin E, we'll use some of the peptides, some of the hyaluronic acid, but it's all part of the soup in repairing a scar by getting the body to repair it better. Very much like when I was burned as a child. I watched the way the general physician was cleaning the wound and dressing it and keeping it moist and hydrated. That was allowing a young kid to sort of heal without fancy pants medical procedures I couldn't have possibly had.
What are some things that people can do at home that are free, that are good for your skin? So, for example, staying out of the sun, is there anything that doesn't cost anything?
There are some free rides in the world of dermatology. I mean, the environment, and I see patients every day that chronologically, by time, have aged slowly. And the areas I'm looking at have been environmentally tarnished. So you'll see the bare part of the breast is like a newborn in a 55, 60-year-old person. And then you look at the décolleté, the sun-exposed area, it's all wrinkly and discolored red and brown and crepey and spots and blotches. That's environmental. And so in someone like that, you slowly repair that tissue both medically and then procedurally. And that's something can be done inexpensively. So for example, besides the sunscreen and sun avoidance, hydrating oils, maybe coconut oil, olive oil. I don't know if they still make Crisco,
I think they do. Oh.
Yeah. Crisco is a very fine shortening, and it works like a charm. But we usually recommend home use coconut oil. That's an example. So besides the sunscreen and sun avoidance, you'll use the coconut oil for hydration. You'll cleanse with a very mild cleanser. But I think repetitive hydration is what's important. And then keeping irritating fabrics off skin is an important thing. So proper hygiene is an inexpensive way to maintain complexion.
How much of our diet is affecting our skin? I imagine it's a lot. There are things that you tell patients to stay away from?
Yeah, I think it's huge. So besides simple home care things for complexion repair, I think that we counsel patients on sleep, rest, relaxation. We counsel them severely on nutrition. And so we actually have diets that influence less testosterone production, more estrogen production, or vice versa. And nutrition is hugely important for just about everything in dermatology. And so some tips at home would be the following. We recommend as low a salt intake as possible. Preferably no added salt, because most food has some degree of salt in it.
Is that because it dehydrates you?
It dehydrates you, and it makes the metabolic process slow.
Okay.
So it has to do something with water balance, and it has to do with the chemistry of metabolic production of the amino acids. So low salt intake, no added salt, is number one. Number two would be something like reduce your dairy intake. The dairy producers of the planet probably wouldn't like that, but I'm just saying that in general, dairy products slow digestion. And so when it comes to acne-prone skin or oil-producing skin, the less dairy, the better. And it's not so much a matter whether it's low-fat or no-fat. It's just a matter of dairy itself is not the biggest friend to the complexion. So salt, dairy, and then things that are highly acidic are inflammatory to the skin. They cause more of a water loss, more of a flushing to the skin. So people who have redness, flushing to the skin, the more acidic the food, as I tell patients, the more tasty something is, chances are your skin's not going to respond well.
Does that pertain to coffee as well?
That pertains especially to things with caffeine.
Okay.
So caffeine...
I'm in trouble then.
Yeah, caffeine is a problem. It just makes the skin a little bit oilier, larger pores, a little bit more ruddy. So the caffeine-containing products, dairy-containing. But I think the biggest offender is sugar. And sugar to the consumer just means birthday cake or donuts. And that's not really what it is. Fruit is a sugar, so you have to watch your fruits. Vegetables are sugars, so you have to watch the vegetables. So we'll recommend, the low glycemic fruits, low glycemic vegetables. And so in my diet, I'll give you an example of what I eat. Probably in the morning I'll have a half a pound of ground turkey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Start the morning with protein.
Yeah.
Right up. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I get up early every day, 4:30 a.m. I'm in the office at about 5:15, and I'll have some of the organic turkey ground up, and I'll put it into some sliced spinach leaves and make a little salad out of it with a little balsamic vinaigrette. And it'll take me an hour and a half to get through that while I'm doing my reading and writing.
And what are you reading and writing?
Well, new formulas, coming up with new ideas, because the patients are really the source for all the products we developed. So I'm just thinking about what did I see yesterday, what ideas did Mrs. X have to say about a new skin hydrating agent. So I'm thinking about things, or I'm making calls internationally, etc. So while I'm doing my work, I'm munching away on spinach salad and organic turkey.
What kind of, when you read, when you get into novels, or what do you like to read outside of skin stuff? Or is it just all skin news? I'm fascinated by routines.
Well, and it's a very static routine in a sense. I get like 18 medical journals a month, so
Okay.
It takes me a while to get through all this. So I'm not a big novel consumer, and
Biography?
all this sort of stuff. So I'll go through usually news stories and scientific articles having to do with other things. And so it's when I actually am using the iPad.
Okay. You're the first person that's come on here and started the day with turkey, spinach, balsamic. I'm going to have to try it.
You should really try it because it's incredibly good, and it's amazing the number of bad habits you can break. And lunch, here's another tip. I can tell you for lunch, I don't eat lunch. Why? Because there's something called postprandial somnolence, where you get really tired and sleepy after you eat. So you can't be tired.
Messes
with
up your day.
Right.
So like the chocolate chip bagel that I ate is really off the menu and really going against everything you just said. And I probably have post ta-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you can make yourself happy with that because you deserve a break. But that would be a bad thing for me, because if you don't get into the habit of sort of restricting what you do, and that discipline isn't there. I used to be 60 pounds heavier.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I wrote the book in 2011, I gave myself a little bit of a number of pages that involved skin, younger skin, and nutrition. And I followed my own, advice, and I lost all that weight. And it all had to do with what I'm eating. And carbohydrates, getting back to that word sugar, carbohydrates, starch, you got to be careful. So we tell the patients, you got to be careful with the fruits and vegetables. You have to be careful with, bread, pasta, potato, rice.
Alcohol?
Because alcohol is a sugar.
And you got to be careful because you have all the best restaurants right near your office. So you will walk right to them.
Yeah, you're careful with all that sort of stuff. And my wife and I, we have date nights on Friday and Saturday. And she, she's very disciplined. My wife, Danny, is a salmon and salad type person, and balsamic. And so we're careful with that. But, a cocktail here and there. We've learned something with medicine, in that if you cause someone to totally deprive themselves of something in their life, they will never follow it. Not for long. So we say, cut back on the caffeine, cut back on the dairy, cut back on the salt, cut back on the carbs. But if you tell them no carbs, you can kiss it goodbye.
Stretch marks. How do you prevent them? How do you avoid them? How do you get rid of them?
Stretch marks come in different flavors. All ancestries, all ethnicities. Men get stretch marks.
I have some right here from when I used to work out a lot.
Right.
They don't look too good.
So stretch marks are an important thing. I mean, it may seem trivial to a lot of people, but stretch marks are very important because it influences just self-perception. It influences, style, clothing, et cetera, sort of a self-image event. And stretch marks, we have it down in a pattern in terms of how to treat it. Number one, it always requires treating it medically first, so there's a retinol involved topically. There's going to be some sort of mechanical polish, cleanse, nourish. And so there's a mechanical home care part for maybe 2-4 weeks to prime it. And then it usually involves some sort of in-office repetitive treatment, whether it's some sort of radiofrequency microneedling, or whether it involves ultrasound, or it involves some sort of heat-based or energy-based device. And with enough repetition, you can do incredibly well in removing the majority of stria, which are stretch marks.
I'm right now putting oil all over my body. Is that what you would recommend to prevent them?
Well, the oil is a good idea because, number one, it reduces the itching, scratching business.
Okay.
And it helps the skin, but it will not prevent stretch marks in someone who is prone to it genetically. So there are some people who have stretch marks that result from just growth patterns. I saw a woman earlier today that from growth on the front of her knees had about 6 inches of stretch marks from her kneecaps to the mid-thigh. That's purely from stage rapid growth as a teen. There are other people who've gained 35, 40 pounds with pregnancy and have no stretch marks. There are other people who get stretch marks just thinking about getting pregnant. So there's a genetics to it. The oil may help reduce the amount, but it won't prevent it. If you're prone to getting it, they will develop to some extent, but they're treatable.
I want to talk a little bit more about vitamin C. Every single doctor we've had on here has said, and skincare expert, and like we had the girl from Drunk Elephant on, she raves about vitamin C. Everyone raves about vitamin C. Why is it so important to a skincare routine?
Vitamin C is important because it's an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and it's required for protein production. So The majority of vitamin C in its water-soluble form is through the diet. So diet is an important thing with this vitamin C. But topically, it turns out that it happens to be beneficial when it's in the proper formulation, presented to the skin properly. You see, that's why in our program, there's a polish rinse, cleanse rinse, then there's a vitamin C sealing it with a nourish. Because we find that the penetrance of the vitamin C is greater if you do the exfoliation first, the rinse, then the cleanse. That's why the whole program was developed. If you have a lack of that exfoliation, the penetrance of the product is reduced. So exfoliation is a big deal. You always have people in my world saying, be gentle with this, be gentle with that, don't rub this, don't rub that. The skin's really quite resilient. So with proper exfoliation, it helps tremendously getting products to penetrate. And vitamin C is an important topical product.
I found so interesting when I read your book, you were one of the first doctors I'd ever heard say this. You said, bring your skincare not only down to your boobs, you said bring it to your back too.
Right.
And you said bring your 3-step method down all the way to your back and even to your arms.
Right.
Why did you recommend that?
Well, you see, and there's a polish, cleanse, nourish that goes for the body as well, because complexion in Lancerville is from the toes up to the hairline. So the whole body
I'm
is
down with that.
Yeah. So the complexion is from head to toe and toe to head. I mean, it just is. And in our office, we have the expression that, in the old days, the complexion was from the jawline to the forehead line. And then I think I made it more popular that the face, neck, décolleté are one visual area of importance, where you get everywhere from the hairline to the white part of the breast area covered, and then that involves up to the shoulder and to the side of the neck. Because if you think about it, when you're sitting or standing in company and people are talking, there are people standing to your side who see the side of your neck. So just looking in 2 dimensions for the face is not covering the 3-dimensional figure that's being presented. So it's always the face, neck, chest, and then we expanded it to that your skin has to look right from the dinner table up. Because if you think about it, next time you go to a party and you see someone who spent a fortune getting their face looking good, the neck and chest don't match. For someone who spent a fortune and a half getting their face, neck, and chest looking good, the hand, arm, shoulder don't usually match. And so we always say the claws have to match if this is going to work.
Lauren was when Lauren first pointed that out to me. One, I've learned so much about skin in the last 4 years, but I never noticed until I did. Once someone said, like, look at the hands, look at the décolleté, look at all. Now I look at everybody.
Part of my business is to be observant. So I'm always looking at all different ages and seeing, why does someone look at you and think you look youthful? And I'm sure you look at this on a different way. So what I've noticed is, like, obviously the chest and the neck and the hands, it's important to cover those up. I have driving gloves.
You'll see that when you get an eye for this, it's something that to the observer is a subconscious second nature. You look at the person, you look at their eyes, that is true. You look at their face, that's true. But then, by nature of the visual field, the face, neck, and chest match. And then when you're holding a fork and your hand doesn't match, the game is over.
I also notice, and you may think I'm crazy, that runners, people that run all the time, that gravity of pounding on the ground sags the skin. So this is my own theory. I've decided that I'm not going to run. I'm a walker. I do Pilates, strength training, and I'm just not going to pound the pavement all the time. I've noticed the skin sags. Is that crazy?
I'm a firm believer in telling people that, look, up and down bouncing here and there may have its moments for certain things. But for the most part, the ligaments can't take it. Yep. So I tell people, get on that elliptical trainer. Go for a brisk walk. But don't keep bouncing stuff around, because it will impact your joints as well as your skin. And when you first asked me, color correction is number 1, but skin placement is number 2. Where things are.
People, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at a face and you're looking at what's called the jowl line, well, that has to do with position. And slicing and dicing isn't necessarily the answer. Skin repositioning, reconditioning is the answer to it. And so bouncing around, there are better ways to get exercise. And so we always tell people the elliptical trainers, brisk walks, Pilates, yoga. It works like a charm.
If you bounce around too much, you'll end up 8.5 months pregnant like me.
That's right.
You know?
Well, shit, if I ever go to dinner with you two, I'm going to wear a beekeeper suit. We'll
be observing you with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
We can't help it. I already do that with you all the time.
Oh, God.
Yeah, right.
She's extended that observant part of her business into our personal life. I look over, she's got like a magnifying glass just staring at me.
Well, it's very interesting that as far as men are concerned, they need to know that the significant other person in their life really looks at them.
I really look at him.
Oh, yeah. She's looking.
I really see you.
I can tell you when I lost the 60 pounds, I remember, and I'm not a fashion whiz, but I remember I said to my wife, I said, I need another pair of jeans. Could you just go and get a pair for me? It's the same thing. But actually, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just make it a 40-inch waist? She looked at me and she said, honey, this is where it ends. And so I'm back down to 31, 32-inch waists. But women care. Men care. Appearances matter. It's not shallow vanity. It's part of acting the role of healthy.
Can you give us a Oprah, Victoria Beckham, secret Kim Kardashian tip? I know that you don't even pay anyone to come to you. They all come to you because they're obsessed with you.
Right.
Can you give us a little secret that they do?
Well, I can tell you that Oprah is responsible, by the way, for the products leaving the Lancer nest and going into retail. That was 2011, and I'll never forget this. And she was there, and she said, not everybody can afford to be a Lancer patient. You need to share the knowledge. It needs to be in distribution. And she was responsible for it going to market at Nordstrom. She had nothing to do with it financially. She just snapped her fingers and it happened.
That's a solid endorsement.
Yeah, that's
a good one to get.
Yeah, so Oprah's the one that is the reason it left the office. Because remember I told you my office was built on the fact you couldn't get the products even online. In fact, I didn't have an online website in 2011. So
wow, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, so it was always from 1983, 4, 5. It was always until 2011 in-house. And in fact, for established patients, they had to contact the office to get refills shipped to them. So Oprah is the one who shared it with the planet. Kim Kardashian is a very intelligent person, and she's sharp as can be. And I can tell you, she is someone who understands the concept of simplicity and program. There's hardly anything she does that doesn't have a plan to it. And it doesn't necessarily involve any procedures. It just involves discipline. And the best disciplined person I know, besides my wife, Danny, is Victoria Beckham. Victoria is a sweetheart and a natural beauty. And I can tell you that there's never a lack of discipline in her life. I can tell you that I'll never forget when we were talking about salmon in the office, and then all of a sudden the world supply of salmon sold out. Yeah, I'll never forget it. And she came back and she said, I made this comment about what we were talking about salmon, and now you can't even get any salmon. They've been globally sold out for weeks. So she adheres to food, water, dietary suggestions, exercise, discipline. No surgical procedures, nothing. Just skincare, Lancer, and lifestyle.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like all three of them are extremely disciplined.
Very disciplined. And I think that's a take-home message. The concept of random lifestyle, random skincare, that doesn't work. You need a program. You need to be motivated. You can't have a program if you're not motivated. And if you're motivated with enough persistence, it shows.
I think that's in anything.
Yeah, that's true in everything. Whether it's physical fitness, it has to do with beauty, it has to do with career, it has to do with well-being. It's just accomplishment. You know, in life, legacy is what's important, and how you keep a disciplined agenda leads to a good legacy.
That's a great tip. Taylor, we have to pull that clip, definitely.
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about the business side. You obviously are so passionate about being a doctor. You can tell when I went to see you, you're so good at what you do and you love it so much, but you've also managed to make this global business that's so successful where you have all these influencers and celebrities and the everyday girl using your products. How have you managed to sort of put away your doctor cap for a second and also put on your business cap?
Well, you know, in a sense, I'm glad you asked because I'm a farm boy, and I always will be. And I may mingle with people in high profile, but I'm still a simple person. And so I think the success of the clinic and the success of the brand has had to do with all the people around me, because I am a 110% physician. When I'm in my office, I only think about the patients one by one that I'm seeing. The business part of it has to do with the love of this legacy for the quality of the products. And so the educational part is what's the main key to the success. It's the sort of thing where the people around me are chronically being trained, and there are new products every 2-3 products per year. And it requires education. So the sales staff, the marketing staff, all have to understand where the products came from, the chemistry. Because if you have quality, the success will follow. And I think it's been because I love being a physician. I love seeing patients every day. And it's because of that the business is good. When you have a physician who thinks of business, then something will suffer.
That's very true. If you were to tell our audience, it's a lot of women. There's some men out there.
I got a couple. I have a couple guys
Okay,
now.
a lot of women.
3.
If you could have them get one product,
Yeah.
and is there one product you can globally recommend to everyone that you think would make a difference?
Well, I think if you look at the Polish, Cleanse, Nourish as a product, that would be one step. So even if you didn't go into the advanced steps, if you kept it on that program level, Polish, Cleanse, Nourish, consistent, within days, you'll see the difference. So I think if you were to have that trio as one product, that's where it is.
Dr. Lancer, you know what's going to happen tonight? My husband is going to put me to bed. He's going to go in my bathroom because we have separate bathrooms.
Yeah.
And he's going to go into my Lazy Susan and he's going to get my
Yep.
3 products.
get them all.
I know this happens. I know it's going to happen. And I'm going to catch him using the 3 products because I'm going to be able to smell the Nourish when he gets
You don't
in
even
bed.
have to guess that's. I'm going to tell you that's 100% going to happen.
You know, I'll tell you that it must be a few years ago. Dear friend of mine and patient, Ryan Seacrest, and I were talking about this. And we were laughing about the fact that the people in his life are always stealing his products. And then I said, you know, it's funny. The products are supposed to last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And I have people coming in wanting refills after 2 weeks. And I'd say to the staff, well, what's the story? And they'd say, well, my significant other is stealing my products.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we developed a line, Polished, for men, which is far more simple than the women's line. But there's a men's line, so he doesn't have to be a thief. But
I can be now, though, because she can't catch me. She's pregnant. I can run faster.
that's right. You can run faster.
Yes.
So for those who are not into the running fast, there's the men's line, and that was an offshoot of the fact that the majority of women were finding they were, you know, there was a pinching of products.
Oh,
I'm in. I'm going to use that, and in the meantime, I'm going to go get the men's line, and I'm going to be looking good. I'll look better next time you see me.
Besides,
You look okay.
Yeah, he looks okay. He could use an exfoliator, though.
The best part is showing them how to use it.
Okay, yeah, I'll show you how to use it. It's a dime size amount, right?
Right.
And tiny little circles.
Tiny circles, and you start just once a week. You start it once a week, and then you get into it because the products are medical grade. You have to use them carefully, and
Gotta get the skin acclimated.
You got to get acclimated to it. And some people, that's why I said you start with the sensitive polish, cleanse, nourish, and then once you're up to that, it's like go from before you get to a motorcycle, you use a tricycle.
And guys, I can attest to his products. I've used them many times on Instagram story. You do a little bit of an exfoliator, you wash it off, then you do a cleanse, and then you do my favorite step, which is the nourish. It's a moisturizer, right?
Right.
And what I love about your product is my 21-year-old sister uses it, but also my stepmom uses it. Julie, she absolutely loves it. So it's all different ages. I'm obsessed. What is a book, a podcast, a resource on skin besides your book, which is called Younger, that you would recommend to our audience on skin?
On skin?
Maybe one of those 70 medical journals.
Well, I think if you go online, there's a sort of almost a lay magazine called Medical Aesthetics, and you can get it on your iPad or something, Medical Aesthetics, and there you'll come across articles having to do with skincare products and new home gadgets, and it'll sort of help keep you out of trouble because it'll tell you what's available at various clinics. But I think that's the thing to do. Medical Aesthetics is a good, simple thing to sort of get started with. I think generally speaking, the other take-home message for the consumer is find yourself a dermatologist to sort of help guide you. It's much easier to get a little guidance in the beginning for someone who deals with it all the time, rather than having to backstep and fix something.
And don't do what I do and get a glycolic peel when you're 20 years old and then go in the sun.
Probably a bad idea.
Horrible idea.
Yeah.
Where can everyone find you? Pimp yourself out, your Instagram handle, everything.
Gee, I don't even know all that. So it's lancerskincare.com and then Lancer Dermatology, and what else is there?
His Instagram handle's at Dr. Lancer RX. And you should follow him. You're a funny follow. I like following you.
You know what you have to do? You have to follow my French bulldog, Louis, the movie star dog.
That's his name.
That's Louis, the movie star dog. Look him up on Instagram. This dog is like he's sort of like the Cary Grant of dogs.
Okay,
Yeah.
well that's okay.
Good thing you know the Instagram of the dog. And is Louis' skin a little wrinkled, or is he using the 3-step?
No, he uses the 3-step.
Okay.
I mean, this guy's got a big career.
I mean, if he's the
ahead of
Cary Grant of French bulldogs, I mean, that's a.
Thank you so much for coming on. You're welcome anytime to come back on and talk skin.
Thank you, Dr. Lancer.
It was terrific. Thank you, guys.